All right, period three. Mr. Peterson here. I am out for a little bit as a close contact, but I wanted to put this video together for you guys as you're starting this week because we're going to be doing more things in Unit 2. And the last week you guys were with me, we started Unit 2, and you guys did a fantastic job, by the way, getting started with Unit 2. And I just want to make sure we cover everything that we did last week, and then you guys are also going to have a quiz this class period too. So I wanted to make sure you guys know what to do on that. Have a good refresher lesson so that you're set and ready to go. Okay, so let's go over these 4 different problem types, and I'll show you guys how to work these out so you guys can remember how to do this. All right, starting with problem number 1, 84. If we're going to do the prime factorization of 84 of any number, we're just going to break it down into all prime numbers. Okay, so 84 can be broken into 2 times 42. All right, and 2 is prime, so we don't need to break that down. So we're going to keep breaking down 42 again until we get to all prime numbers. All right, so that's going to leave us with 2 and 21. And then for 21, we can break that down into 3 and 7. All right, and we can't break down anything else because we're down to just all prime numbers, so that's exactly what we're looking for. So now we're just going to write out all of these prime numbers into one multiplication chain here. So if I write that out, I'm going to have 2 times 2 times 3 times 7, all right, which we can shorten that up a little bit and call this 2 to the power of 2 times 3 times 7. Okay, and that would be our proper way to get that written. All right, so there's your little review on problem number 1. Let's take a look at problem 2. So we also did this type the last week we were together, where we took 2 monomials like this. Each one of these would be a monomial, and we found the greatest common factor of those 2 monomials. All right, so first you take a look at the numbers. You have 16 and you have 48. All right, just focus on the numbers. You want to find the greatest common factor for 16 and 48. Okay, so there's a lot of factors of 16 and 48, but you want to find the greatest one, the biggest one for both of them. Okay, and if you can't figure out what it is just by looking at the numbers, all right, you can prime factor both of these numbers and it'll tell you what the greatest common factor is. Okay, so if I do that right quick just to show you, if you already know the greatest common factor, awesome. That's great. All right, if you don't, if you have trouble with that, we can break it down and I'll show you how we can do that and figure that out. Okay, so 16 would get us 2 times 8, 8 would get us 2 times 4, and 4 would get us 2 times 2. All right, so if I write down 16x3 broken into prime factors, I would get 16x3 is equal to 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 3x's. Okay, so there's 16x3 broken out. All right, do the same thing with 48. I'll start breaking that out. We'd have 2 times 24. All right, and then 2 times 12, and then 2 times 6, and then 2 times 3. All right, so there's 48 broken out into all prime factors. All right, so now if I take and write that out, 48x2 is equal to 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 times x times x. All right, so there's all our prime factors for 48x2. All right, now we circle what's in common. So I have one set of 2's, another set of 2's, a third set of 2's, and 4 sets of 2's. And I also have 2 sets of x's in common. Okay, so for each pair of numbers, I would pull a number out. Okay, so for each set of 2's, I'm pulling a number out, and my x's times x times x. And if I put that all together, that is going to equal 16x to the power of 2. All right, so that would be my greatest common factor for that. All right, I realize this took a little bit of time. All right, this is only necessary if you need it to help you find what the greatest common factor was. All right, if you didn't know already, this way gets you to that answer. Okay? All right, so there's number 2. So now let's take a look at number 3. Okay, so number 3 tells you need to factor 6n2 plus 15n. Okay, so going back to what we talked about with unit 2, this represents an answer to something that's already been multiplied together. Okay, and we are just working backwards to figure out what did this problem look like before it got multiplied together. Okay, and that process of working backwards is called factor or factoring. All right, so when we say we're going to factor this, what we're really saying is we want to work backwards to see what it looked like in the beginning. Okay, so in the beginning, this is what this problem looked like. There was something outside of a set of parentheses, and inside the parentheses, because we have 2 terms here, we would have a space, your plus sign, your space, and the end of your parentheses. Okay, so there was a problem that looked like this that got multiplied and became this answer over here. All right, so we're trying to fill in these blanks. We want to know what these were, and we want to know what this was out here, which it's going to be your greatest common factor between these 2 terms here. All right, because your greatest common factor will sit out here, and then it gets multiplied by everything inside of here to make that answer. All right, so that's what I mean by working backwards. Okay, so now we just want to take a look at these and pull out our greatest common factor. Okay, take a look at the numbers. You got 6 and 15. Just the numbers 6 and 15, your greatest common factor for those 2 is going to be 3. All right, 3 is the biggest number that goes into both of them. All right, now take a look at how many n's they both have in common. This one has 1 n, this one has 2 n's, so the most n's they both have in common is 1. All right, so there's our greatest common factor on the outside. 3n is the greatest common factor of these 2 here. Now we just got to figure out what goes on the inside of each of these blanks. All right, start with this right here. Start with the number. You need a 6, you have a 3, so you need to multiply 3 times 2 to make 6. All right, so a 2 goes in that blank. All right, and then take a look at your n's. You have 1 n, you need 2 n's, so you need to put an n1 right there. So that way when you multiply n1 and n1, it makes n2. All right, so that one checks out. Okay, fantastic. Now let's take a look at what goes in this blank over here. All right, you need a 15, you have a 3, so you're going to multiply 3 by 5 to get 15. Okay, and then check to see if you need any n's. You have an n1, you already have an n1 over here, so you don't need any more n's in that spot right there. All right, so this here would be your answer to that problem. That's the process of factoring, figuring out what did the problem look like before all the multiplying took place. All right, so hopefully that brings back a little bit of memories of what we did there. So there's problem number 3. Let's take a look at our last example for you, number 4. Okay, so number 4 looks like this. We're going to factor, so we're going to figure out what this problem looked like in the beginning. We're going to use a method called grouping. Okay, so we did this the last time we had class also. All right, and here's why we're doing grouping. If you look at each one of these numbers, 2, 6, 3, and 9, there's no greatest common factor between all 4 of those numbers other than the number 1. Okay, so when you have that situation where you don't have a greatest common factor between all 4 of your numbers other than 1, we're going to go through the process of grouping. All right, which means we're going to separate it. We're going to group these 2 together and group these 2 together, and we're just going to find the greatest common factor for each one of them. All right, so start with this group here. If I start finding my greatest common factor of this group, I'm going to have something out here, a parentheses, a space, a plus, and a space. And I'm going to figure out what goes into those two spaces and what's going to be my greatest common factor out here. Okay, so take a look. The greatest common factor for 2 and 6 is going to be 2. And then take a look at how many x's you need. You have an x3, you have an x2. The most amount of x's they both have in common is x2. All right, perfect. There's your greatest common factor for this grouping. All right, now just figure out what needs to go into your blanks right here. Okay, so you have a 2, you need a 2, so you don't need any numbers right here because you already have a 2, and that's what you're trying to get. All right, check your x's. You have x2, you need x3, you need up here, so you need to multiply this by x1 to make 2x3. Okay, perfect, that checks out. All right, take a look at this over here. You need a 6, you have a 2, so you're going to multiply 2 by 3 to get your 6. And check out your x's. You have x2 already. You need x2, so you don't need any extra x's over here in this spot. All right, so we factored the first one. That one's done. Bring down this plus sign. Start your new factoring for this group over here. You need a blank, parentheses, space, a plus sign, and another blank like that. All right. Find your greatest common factor for the numbers 3 and 9. The biggest number that goes into both of them is 3. And they don't have any x's in common, so we're not going to put any x's out here. All right, so now we're just going to figure out what we need. So 3 needs to get multiplied by everything in here to make this up here. So 3 times, we don't need anything here because we need a 3 and we already have one, but we need an x with that 3. So we're going to multiply 3 times x to make 3x. Okay, and then over here we need a 9, so we're going to go 3 times 3 to make 9. Okay, and take a look at what we have here. Both sets of parentheses are exactly the same. That means you did the problem right. Okay, that is what you're looking for. All right, now it's time to just group them into 2 binomials. Okay, so your first binomial is going to be this and this in your first set of parentheses, 2x2 plus 3. Your second set of parentheses is going to be, you just pick one of these to put in there. All right, it doesn't matter, x plus 3. All right, so this would be your answer. All right, what this represents is this is the 2 binomials that got multiplied together to give you this answer up here. All right, like if you take these 2 binomials, we're not going to go through the steps, but if I just show you over here right quick, 2x plus 3 times x plus 3. If you did your foiling and if you multiplied those together, you would get that answer up there. All right, so that's what we're looking for. All right, so this is how the problem started, so that when the foiling took place, we got that answer there. We just worked backwards, we factored to get it figured out what it looked like before. All right, there's a little review for you guys. That's what I was going to do for you guys in class, but unfortunately that didn't work out. So there's a little video. I hope that helps. So what you guys have now is a review worksheet to do, which is more of these type of problems we just went over, and then you guys will have a quiz to take for the second half of class. All right, I hope that goes okay, and I hope to get to see you guys soon. All right, thanks for watching.